because they're all our machines. Now we're working with consultants who might work 2 days on your site and 3 days on someone else's, and trying to say to them, you've got to have semantic antivirus to work on our site, otherwise admission control won't work. And he says, yes, but company Y, who I'm working for on Friday, insists that I've got to have McAfee, otherwise their admission control won't work for them. It's brain dead, isn't it? We've got to have flexible solutions, and flexible solutions mean open standards at the end of the day. It doesn't mean open software. Don't get me wrong, I'd be very hypocritical standing up here as a New York Stock Exchange quoted company and saying we want free software. At the end of the day, you know, my board's aim is to make money for ICI and my shareholders. And I wouldn't deny that of any company out there, but business models differ. Ultimately, though, it's all about standards. And if you can get the interoperability standards correct, actually everyone makes a lot more money. So, just a little bit of history. 2004, January, was the initial composition. Jericho and its members spent the first year gazing at its navel, if you like, looking at the problem space. What we wanted to do is actually have no vendors involved whatsoever, so that we could do just that in isolation, look at the problem, and go away and say, this is the problem as we see it. Let's define the problem space properly first, and then we'll talk to the vendors. Otherwise, of course, you end up with some of the crazy situations we've had in the past. I mean, everyone knows about the WiMAX battle. I think it was Intel and Motorola, wasn't it, who was duking it out in public over the WiMAX standard? I can't remember, but anyway, you get into some pretty crazy situations. So we wanted to say, look, let's define it. And we spent a year doing that. We passed that at the end of 2004, and early in 2005, vendors have been allowed to join. And actually, this is an old slide, because we now got many more than 12 vendor members. We also formed an alliance with an open group, because at the end of the day, what we didn't want to do is spend a lot of my life actually in the administration of this organization, because at the end of the day, I said I don't get paid to do this. So we aligned ourselves with the Open Group for a number of... Everyone familiar with the Open Group? Anyone not heard of the Open Group? Good, there we are. Oh, one. Oh, sorry, okay. The Open Group is based out of California. It's got offices around the world. It understands... I mean, the Open Group owns things like the Kerberos standard and everything else. So the key tenet, and one of the things we aligned with the Open Group for, is that the Open Group was pledged to ensure that all its output was free and for public use. So royalty-free standard, you know, royalty-free, you could take their output and you could use it without any problems. And we were very aware that anything that Jericho developed or came up with, we wanted people to be able to take without saying, there's going to be a royalty to pay or anything else. But obviously we still need to retain the intellectual property rights to it. So the Open Group framework is really good for us because it meets our aspirations as a group. It does all the administration for us. It looks after us. It, you know, does the sheepdog bit, keeps us all in order, makes us attend meetings, minutes the meetings and everything else, and organizes things for us, but leaves the Jericho Forum members to actually get on doing the work. It's a global organization. And ultimately, their tagline is this thing called boundaryless information flow, which you'll see actually matches deperimeterization quite nicely. So, aims. I think we've talked about most of these. Drive and influence the discussion, change the mindset. Well, you know, if people have heard of deperimeterization, we've obviously succeeded in something, if not, you know, just getting the word into the world. Really, the couple of key things, refine, distinguish what are Jericho Forum architectural principles versus just plain old good security design. A lot of people come up and, you know, when I speak and say, aren't you actually, all you're actually talking about is just good security design? To which the answer is no, we're not. We're talking about, yes, you know, good security design is a fundamental principle, but at the end of the day, it's good security design to do this. And we'll talk about what this is in a minute. Build and Work published the visioning document. The visioning document was the original white paper we published after a year of inward looking at ourselves, freely available on the Jericho Forum website. Define the key messages, clarify there's not just one Jericho Forum solution. What it's not another standards body. There is not going to be a Jericho Forum stamp of approval. This product is Jericho Forum approved. It's not a cartel. It's not about buying a single solution. It's not here to compete or dismantle existing good security, but it is there to build on it. So in terms of members, you've visited all the vendor booths out there with these are our customers. Well, these are our members, or some of them anyway. These are the ones who agreed to be named. You'll notice a few names, hopefully, that you'll recognize up there. And on the panel later, you'll have some Jericho Forum members and some not Jericho Forum members up there. But in terms of some interesting ones, Motorola, we were at Motorola earlier this year. They hosted our US public conference, which was very nice of them. We have Qantas on the board. We have Boeing on the board, hot off the press. Steve Whitlock, who's going to be on the panel later, has just been voted onto the Jericho Forum board. Procter & Gamble sit on the board. Up here, we have Cisco as members, Symantec are active members, Cisco are active members, IBM are active members. So it's good, and a lot of people contributing an awful lot. So, let's get on to commandments. So the rationale, Jericho Forum, in a nutshell, deperimeterization in a nutshell, your security perimeters are disappearing. They're not quite gone yet, but they are disappearing. So what are you going to do about it? This is your challenge for the next couple of years. And for us, we need to express what, why, and how to do it, but in high-level terms, so a set of principles. So, and again, distinctions between good security, i.e. principle of least privilege, which is, that's just good security. Does that make it Jericho? Absolutely not. Yeah, and deperimeterization, which is the end-to-end principle. And ultimately, here's the rub. Why should I care? Well, deperimeterization is a disruptive change. It is going to change the way you do things. It is going to need you to go back to your board and say, those really expensive deep packet firewalls that I've been telling you and you've been forking out money for the last 5 years, well, they're not actually doing you much good. You're going to have to do something else, and you're going to have to fork out some more money to do something extra, different, whatever. You can recover some of that money, but you're going to recover that other ways. So yes, you're going to spend more money on security, but you are going to save money elsewhere, and that might be improved business processes, it might be faster to market, it might be the fact you're going to save a lot of money on your networking. But ultimately, you're not necessarily going to recover it via the security route. But here's an interesting difference, because the story you are having with your board and with your senior management is about security making a business difference. Security being a business enabler, rather than the boys who like to say no. So, huge variety of starting points, huge variety of technological dependencies, large appetite for change, because with this comes the ability to mobilize. Ultimately, what we need to do this is a rule of thumb. What we do not need is a Bible or a cookbook. Do it this way, and it'll solve all your problems. And it's a benchmark. And this is what the commandments are. So here's how they're structured. And unfortunately, like most things, Jericho obviously has the biblical reference behind it. Joshua 6 verse 20, I think, offhand, if I remember rightly. The walls of they blew the trumpets and the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. We tried to get the commandments down to 10 commandments and never succeeded. But there we are. So we have 11 commandments in there. Fundamentals, 3 fundamental commandments, 2 about surviving in a hostile world, 2 on the need for trust, 1 on identity management and federation. That one's probably at some point going to split, And well, the feeling is that once we actually properly get into identity management and federation, it's such a huge subject, it's going to need more than one commandment in there. But at the moment it's just one commandment, and then 3 on access to data. So here's the first one. And it's obvious when you look at it, isn't it? The scope and level of protection must be specific and appropriate to the asset at risk. How often do we put one-size-fits-all solutions into our business? It doesn't matter what it is, we're going to protect it. And it's going to cost you X to protect it. And it doesn't matter actually whether it's high risk, low risk. How many people here classify their data? Okay, keep your hands up. Okay, for those of you who classify your data, keep your hands up if you think you do it really well. Thank you for being so honest. The problem with protecting any asset that you have is you have to know how it's classified, and if you're not doing good classification, and to be honest, none of us do. I don't. We don't as an organisation. It's absolutely dreadful. You know, we do it. We have a standard and we apply it, but we don't apply it very well and we don't apply it consistently. And that's pretty normal for most organisations I've come across. I think the only exception was when I worked for Motorola. Motorola actually. Anyone here from Motorola? No, okay. Motorola do it pretty well, in my experience, but only because they lost a couple of court cases and they were forced into doing it. So you have to have the pain to actually drive something like data classification. So the problem is, if you don't know what your assets are out there and how they're classified, how do you provide appropriate protection for them? Well, that's an interesting one. But at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is overclassify. The biggest problem with classification is that people, by default, overclassify. And with this one, business demands that security enables business agility and is cost-effective. You actually want not too much, and you want enough security, but not too much, because that makes it cost-effective and it makes it agile. And again, here's the bottom one. In general, it's easy to protect an asset the closer the protection is provided. Again, it's obvious when you think about it, but it's a fundamental. Here's the second one. Complex security doesn't work. How many people had PKI projects 5 years back? How many of them worked? Thank you, Justin. There's Justin sitting down the front from VeriSign here. So probably only one of the few solutions that does actually work. I have to say, when I came into ICI 4.5 years ago, they had a £500,000 budget line item for PKI because they thought it would be a good thing and everyone else was doing it. And all the salesman was telling them that this is the year of PKI. So they had this wonderful budget line item, and I sort of sent a note out to all the CIOs of all my business lines and said, I have this budget line item for PKI, and it's going to fund the implementation, but after year 1, you're going to have to divvy up the costs between you to keep it running. So what I'd like to know is how many users are actually going to use this, such that I can split the costs appropriately across all your businesses. I have 35,000 users, and I had 15 who owned up to wanting PKI at a cost of £500,000. So what's that? Just under $1 million. So yeah, so we canned it, we binned it, we got rid of it, and we spent the money on something much more sensible that actually brought some business value.